February 2026 began quietly in the Northeast. The air was crisp, the snow blanketed the streets in a gentle hush, and life moved at its usual winter pace. There was a sense of routine comfort, as if the world was wrapped in a soft, white cocoon. People went about their routines, bundled in scarves and gloves, scraping ice from windshields, and heading to work or school. The city's heartbeat was steady, undisturbed by anything out of the ordinary. With no hint of what was coming, families enjoyed quiet evenings at home. Children played in the snow, and neighbors chatted on their porches, all unaware that their world was about to change. The weekend of February 21st was approaching, and most were making ordinary plans. Movies, family visits, or just staying in. Restaurants took reservations, theaters sold tickets, and families penciled in gatherings expecting nothing more than a typical winter weekend. Early weather forecasts predicted only a minor storm, likely to pass out at sea. Meteorologists spoke with calm certainty, their graphics showing a small system that seemed destined to miss the coast. No one was stocking up or preparing for anything major. The weather was just another background detail, barely worth a second glance. Supermarket shelves were full, gas stations empty. There was no sense of urgency. People picked up groceries for the week, not for survival. The calm was based on those first reassuring weather reports. Families watched the news with little concern, trusting the experts and their familiar routines. But by Friday, February 20th, meteorologists started to look uneasy. Subtle changes in their tone crept into the broadcasts, and behind the scenes, weather experts began to notice troubling patterns. The storm system was behaving unpredictably, gaining strength and shifting course. What had seemed like a harmless disturbance was now growing, fueled by unexpected winds and moisture from the Atlantic. By Saturday morning, everything changed. The storm was now targeting major cities like New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. The radar images were suddenly alarming, showing a massive system barreling straight for the heart of the Northeast. Suddenly, the message was urgent. A massive, dangerous blizzard was imminent. Phones buzzed with emergency alerts, and news anchors interrupted regular programming with dire warnings. Weekend plans were abandoned as panic and urgency spread. Restaurants and theaters emptied, and families huddled together, anxiously watching the news and calling loved ones. People who'd been relaxed just hours before rushed to prepare for what was now called a historic blizzard. Supermarkets and hardware stores filled with frantic shoppers grabbing whatever supplies they could find. The storm was no longer a distant threat. It was a monster barreling toward them. The sky darkened, and a sense of dread settled over the region. The sense of safety vanished almost overnight. Streets that had been busy just hours before were now eerily empty, as everyone braced for what was coming. The region had only hours to get ready. Emergency crews scrambled to prepare vehicles, families boarded up windows, and city workers rushed to salt the roads before the first flakes fell. The winter surprise was now a full-blown crisis. Emergency response centers buzzed with activity, and first responders braced for a long, dangerous night ahead. The Northeast braced for impact, caught completely off guard. Families gathered in living rooms, watching the storm's progress on TV, hoping they had done enough to prepare. The countdown to disaster had begun. In just a matter of hours, the region would face one of the most unexpected and powerful storms in recent memory, a storm that would test the resilience of millions and remind everyone how quickly life can change. Weather forecasting is like detective work for the sky. Meteorologists use weather balloons, radar, and satellites to gather data on temperature, air pressure, and moisture. Doppler radar tracks precipitation and movement, while satellites provide a bird's-eye view of storm systems. All this information is fed into supercomputers that run complex weather models. These models use physics to predict how the atmosphere will behave. But the atmosphere is chaotic. A tiny change can have huge effects days later. That's why forecasters run multiple models at once. Sometimes the models agree, but often they don't. One might predict a storm will miss the coast, another says it will hit. This uncertainty makes forecasting challenging, especially for fast-changing storms. The blizzard of 2026 was a perfect example of how quickly things can shift. Even the best science can be caught off guard. The blizzard of February 2026 quickly became one of the most challenging storms meteorologists had ever faced. From the very beginning, it was clear that this was no ordinary winter event. The storm's path and intensity were shrouded in uncertainty, making it a true forecasting nightmare. The main computer models, which forecasters rely on to predict the weather, were in sharp disagreement. This wasn't just a minor difference. These models painted two completely different pictures of what was about to happen. The European model, known for its accuracy in past storms, predicted a powerful, crippling blizzard would slam into the Northeast, bringing feet of snow and dangerous winds. Meanwhile, the American model showed the storm veering harmlessly out to sea, sparing the region from the worst impacts. The contrast between these forecasts left experts puzzled and anxious. Many forecasters, along with the public, put their faith in the less threatening American model. News outlets reported a milder scenario, and people went about their routines, reassured by the idea that the storm would miss them. This early comforting forecast shaped how people prepared, or, more accurately, how they didn't prepare. Stores remained calm, and few rushed to stock up on supplies. Life continued as usual, with little sense of urgency. But behind the scenes, the atmosphere was in a delicate, chaotic state. Even a tiny shift in temperature or wind could dramatically alter the storm's path. Meteorologists knew that the situation could change in an instant. It wasn't until Saturday morning, just hours before the storm hit, that both models finally aligned. Suddenly, the data was clear. A historic blizzard was on its way, and there was no longer any doubt. The puzzle that had confounded experts was finally solved, but the answer was alarming. The region was now facing a major emergency, with almost no time to spare. Forecasters scrambled to warn millions of people, urging them to take immediate action. City officials rushed to prepare emergency plans and get the word out. The scientific uncertainty was gone, replaced by a frantic race against the clock. Every minute counted as the storm barreled closer. The tale of two models had ended with a single, frightening conclusion. A massive blizzard was imminent, and the region had precious little time to get ready. Suddenly, panic set in. People rushed to stores, city crews scrambled to prepare roads, and everyone braced for the worst. In the end, it was the storm's unpredictability, the very thing that made it so hard to forecast, that became its most dangerous feature. When the blizzard struck on February 22nd, it unleashed a force even more intense than forecasters had warned. Meteorologists had predicted a major event, but few could have imagined the true scale and ferocity of what was to come. As the first flakes began to fall, it quickly became clear that this would be a storm for the history books. The storm system stretched its icy grip from the Delmarva Peninsula all the way to Boston, blanketing the entire Northeast in a relentless assault of snow and wind. It moved with the power and organization of a winter hurricane, swirling bands of snow across hundreds of miles. Winds howled through city streets, gusting over 60 miles per hour in many areas. In some exposed locations, wind speeds reached a staggering 84 miles per hour, enough to snap trees like twigs and send power lines crashing to the ground. The roar of the wind was constant, rattling windows and shaking buildings. Snow fell at an astonishing rate of 2 to 3 inches per hour, quickly overwhelming even the most prepared snowplow crews. Streets that had just been cleared vanished under a fresh blanket of snow within minutes, making it nearly impossible to keep up. The combination of fine, powdery snow and relentless, swirling winds created enormous drifts, some as high as cars, and reduced visibility to near zero. For hours, whiteout conditions made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead, turning familiar neighborhoods into a disorienting, frozen wasteland. Major cities like New York and Boston were buried under more than 2 feet of snow, with some suburbs and inland towns reporting totals close to 3 feet. The sheer volume of snow transformed cityscapes, burying cars, sidewalks, and entire blocks beneath towering piles. The immense weight of the snow put tremendous strain on roofs and infrastructure. Emergency crews raced to clear snow from rooftops, trying to prevent dangerous collapses. Power outages became widespread as lines snapped under the burden, leaving thousands in the dark and cold. Blizzard conditions, howling winds, blinding snow, and treacherous ice persisted for hours on end. Travel became not just difficult, but life-threatening. Vehicles were stranded, and emergency responders struggled to reach those in need. Along the coast, the storm's fury was compounded by a powerful storm surge. Seawater flooded roads and poured into homes, forcing evacuations and leaving entire neighborhoods underwater. Emergency workers braved the elements to rescue stranded residents. Major airports across the region shut down, grounding thousands of flights. Highways disappeared beneath snowdrifts, and public transit systems ground to a halt. The entire transportation network was paralyzed, stranding travelers and commuters alike. The region, usually alive with activity, was eerily silent. Iconic landmarks stood deserted, their outlines softened by snow. For a moment, the relentless pace of city life was brought to a complete standstill. With roads impassable and power out in many neighborhoods, all anyone could do was hunker down and wait for the storm to pass. Families gathered by candlelight, watching as snow piled higher and higher outside their windows. The blizzard's fury was total, its power unyielding. Emergency vehicles struggled to navigate the whiteout, and the howling wind seemed to shake the very foundations of the cities. The Northeast was brought to a standstill, frozen in time by the relentless storm. Streets, highways, and neighborhoods disappeared beneath a vast, unbroken expanse of white. In the face of such overwhelming conditions, survival became the only priority. Neighbors checked on one another, emergency shelters opened their doors, and communities came together to weather the storm's historic power. When the forecast changed, officials had less than 48 hours to act. States of emergency were declared, giving governments power to protect the public. Travel bans kept non-emergency vehicles off the roads before the first snowflake fell. Airlines canceled thousands of flights, preventing chaos at airports. Public transit systems shut down, giving people a final chance to get home. Supermarkets and gas stations were suddenly packed as people rushed to stock up. The atmosphere was tense, anxiety, and urgency everywhere. Emergency services and snow crews prepared for a grueling weekend. The region shifted from calm to high alert in hours. Every minute of preparation mattered. The race was on to beat the storm. Once the snow started, movement became impossible. One of the biggest challenges wasn't the storm, it was human psychology. People tend to believe the first forecast they hear, even if it changes later. This anchoring bias made many slow to react when warnings became urgent. Some dismissed the new forecasts, thinking meteorologists were exaggerating. The delay in belief put people at risk as the situation turned critical. Confusion and distrust spread, especially on social media. Forecasters struggled to communicate the new danger. Breaking through the initial bias required strong, clear, and repeated messaging. Officials had to convince the public that the threat was real and immediate. The lesson: how we communicate risk is as important as the facts themselves. Changing minds, quickly, can save lives. The blizzard was a trial by fire for newly elected leaders in the Northeast. Governors and mayors had to make fast, high-stakes decisions affecting millions. New York City's mayor, Zoran Mamdani, led with clear, constant communication, press conferences, news appearances, and social media updates. The focus was on public trust, being visible, decisive, and transparent. Coordination with emergency services, utilities, and transportation was crucial. Early shutdowns of travel and services saved lives. The crisis became a defining moment for these leaders. Their response provided stability and reassurance in a time of chaos. Amid the chaos, everyday people became heroes. Neighbors checked on the vulnerable, shared supplies, and cleared snow for each other. First responders and essential workers braved the storm to keep others safe. Acts of kindness, like sharing warmth or shoveling out cars for healthcare workers, spread hope. The blizzard revealed the resilience and generosity of communities. In the darkest winter, humanity shone brightest. The blizzard left more than snow, it left lessons. Forecasting is about probabilities, not certainties. Models must keep improving. Communicating uncertainty and urgency is vital, especially when forecasts change fast. The public must learn to adapt quickly and not cling to the first story. Preparedness is a year-round responsibility. Emergency kits and plans matter. As climate change brings more extreme weather, these lessons grow more urgent. The storm was a wake-up call for science, officials, and communities alike. By learning and adapting, we'll be better prepared for the next big storm. The snow melted, but the lessons endure.